Hi, it's Ashley from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and today we're doing another grocery store cake transformation. I went a little bigger on this cake this time around, and I was hoping to get a two-tiered out of it, but it was too small, and this is a great lesson in portion sizes. I've had many customers in the past be concerned that an 8-inch cake might be too small, but the thing with specialty cakes is that they're usually quite tall. So when choosing your grocery store cake, try to choose one that doesn't have a lot of colors. This time around, I'm going to be using the exact same buttercream that comes with the cake. I'm not going to be adding any more buttercream to this at all. When I've done this before, I completely scraped it all off and then used my own buttercream. But I really wanted to show you guys how to transform it so you don't have to spend that much extra money at all on this. If you don't have a spatula like I do, you could easily use a knife. Just make sure that you use the side that is not serrated. I got this cake from Safeway, and pretty much my whole childhood and even into my teenage years, I got many of my cakes from Safeway for birthdays. Despite consuming a lot of these cakes throughout my lifetime, I can't quite put my finger on what the actual buttercream is made out of, but it doesn't function exactly like an American buttercream, and it doesn't function like a meringue buttercream either. It was at this point that I realized I probably mathematically would not be able to get a two-tier out of this, so instead I opted to make a super high rectangular cake. You can make a circular cake out of this as well, but I wanted to utilize as much of the cake as possible. When I was scraping off the frosting, I was able to make sure that none of the crumb went in there. So we're just going to take that and dye it with a little bit of black food gel. Now, when I was placing this on, it was not as smooth and as whippable as it was before. Perhaps putting it onto a pot of boiling water might have loosened it up a little bit and made it a little bit more functional, but it was still spreadable. It just didn't have the same texture that it had before I whipped it. If you've ever worked at Safeway or know what's in the frosting, please let me know, and that way in future I'll know exactly how to handle this buttercream. This is why cake decorating takes a lot of practice, because not all mediums are going to be the same, and you're not always going to be able to decorate the same as everybody else. For example, when I use my Italian meringue buttercream, I find that the easiest to crumb coat and cover a cake, but my friend really loves to use American buttercream. And that is my roundabout way of explaining why this is taking me so long to cover. That and the fact that whenever you're doing something with a straight edge, it is harder to get those clean edges. So I will say, if you're just kind of starting out with cake decorating and you're just using this tutorial to get some ideas, I would go for a rounded cake first before you go for a straight edge cake. What I'm doing here is I put on some white food coloring onto this little mini spatula, and I am just kind of painting it on haphazardly while also creating those edges. I was really hoping that my Cricut would be able to do this job, but unfortunately you do need punches if you want to make wafer paper flowers, or if you don't want to purchase any more tools, you can just use scissors or an X-Acto knife. Of course, punches are way easier as they are infinitely faster and you don't have to trace things and cut things out. After you cut out your wafer paper, right away you want to make sure that you do this step, which is just kind of rolling those petals back to give it a little bit of a flare. This is not to make realistic wafer paper flowers, but instead it's supposed to kind of look like a paper craft. Now, whenever I'm using tools that aren't necessarily meant for food items, I do make sure to wash them, and I always make sure to only use them for that type of project. Wafer paper is relatively inexpensive. I think it was around $6 or so for about 10 sheets, and you can get a lot of flowers out of one sheet of paper. I believed I only ended up using a sheet and a half. Do try to make sure that you utilize every single spot that you can, because it is hard to use up the scraps for anything else. I arranged them all nicely like this in preparation to get airbrushed by this silver sheen, but my airbrush was very, very powerful, so unfortunately they were floating around. I did have to hold them down in order for them to get airbrushed. Now, wafer paper reacts in a very different way than maybe other mediums that you might have used before. Moisture of any kind is going to make your wafer paper kind of curl up, and it'll do it fairly naturally. So all I'm doing here is I want a few of those flowers curled up a little bit more, so I'm just taking a little bit of water there. Now I'm going to create an edible paste. Now you guys know I generally just use steaming or water to adhere things, but whenever I'm working with wafer paper, I do like to mix Tylose with water, and there's really not a specific amount that you need to use. It's just the amount that works for you. Obviously, the more powder that you use, the thicker the paste will be. The paste stays really nice and translucent, so you can easily adhere anything. Specifically with wafer paper, I really like using this medium. What I love about using wafer paper, and when you're creating this type of style, it's really easy to do. There's not a whole lot of technique. This stuff was really sticky, so as I was trying to clean off my board, I just could not get it clean with that paper towel. So instead, I decided to steam it, and it worked like a charm. After you're done with all the wafer paper flowers, you can just go ahead and place them on however you see fit. Now, this buttercream did not form a crust at all, so I was able to just stick them on. If your grocery store cake has a crust that's formed once you placed it in the fridge and took it back out, then go ahead and use some of that edible glue. Now, a lot of people have commented on my past transformation videos, why would you do this? Why not just start from scratch and bake your own cake? And the thing is that some people really just don't like to bake, but they really love the decorating aspect. That's one reason. Another reason is that it's just fun to kind of see how you can take one type of cake and make it look completely different. And lastly, if you love the taste of grocery store cakes, but you just want it to look a little bit more special, then I really hope that this video gives you those tips and tools. And the very last thing I'm doing here is adding a little bit of a sheen, but you could honestly skip this part if you don't have an airbrush machine. It just makes it slightly shinier. Now, to make all those flowers stand up on their own, I really didn't have to do much, and that's the beauty of using the wafer paper, is that you can honestly just build it up and use a little bit of that edible glue, and it's all going to stick in place very nicely. What I love about this is I know it's going to taste exactly the same, but it just looks completely different. And if you look at the back area here, you can see I don't have any wire holding it up, no popsicle sticks, no nothing. It's just going to stand on its own. Now let's get into the pricing of this cake. Now, I personally wouldn't resell a grocery store cake, but rather I would make it from scratch, and that is what I would charge in Canadian dollars. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading daily, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!